Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Brewing with Jim.
Me too. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome back to Jim specifically.
Thank you. And to Joseph.
We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this would be a very short show.
It would be for both of us.
Yeah, this is the show, of course, where we take your questions and we hand them off to this man sitting in front of me in the podcast studio, Mr. Jim Brewington. How are you doing this morning, Jim?
I'm happy. I feel good.
Good.
And as we record this is our last day of the week, even though it's Thursday.
I know.
And we have spring break coming on.
That's
Easter
right.
break. We get to say Easter break because we're a Christian
That's
school.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, you're right. This is our last time in the studio recording an episode before our Easter break.
Easter break.
I'm really looking forward to break. Do you have plans for break?
Oh, yes. This is so exciting. It's time for me to renew my driver's license.
I
And
just did that.
Did you? Well,
I did.
It's a little different when you're my age. If you're over 70, you have to go into DMV and take a test.
Oh, boy.
Well, you can take the test online, but you have to take a test every single time. It's a knowledge test, not a driving test.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. So, boy, that's going to be fun.
Oh.
And yeah, I mean, who doesn't like to go to DMV? And that's the reason God invented books. So
There
you
we
can
go.
take one with you and sit there and read a book.
That's right.
Debbie has people coming over for Easter. We go to church.
Of course, yeah.
On Easter, or the Saturday before. I've conducted so many Easter services and so many Good Friday services that it's nice to be able to go when I want to and sit where I want to.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It kind of gets into the question even a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe an audience member is looking ahead to, well, when this episode airs, Easter will be behind us. So maybe,
Yes.
but maybe they don't know this episode's coming yet. But maybe right now when we're recording this, there are people in our midst, students, etc., that would really resonate with our question today.
Let's do it.
The question comes to us from an anonymous, presumably a student. And the question for us today is, how do I tell my parents that I don't want to go to church with them? That's a sticky question.
I think the question isn't really about church. I think the question is about how do I communicate with my parents? And we have to assume, I'm going to assume, that the questioner lives at home and is a minor.
Yep.
Is not financially independent.
Yep.
Is dependent on their parents, which, by the way, is a factor. If you're financially independent, you don't have to ask your parents.
That's fair.
Or talk to them about not wanting to do something. You're in your own living place. And so, okay, let's assume that this person is at home and is a minor and is dependent. I can't assume the temperament of this questioner. I don't know what the relationship with the parents is like, which may affect
That
the
makes
way
a
you
big difference.
communicate with them. But I think this questioner is assuming this is going to be confrontational. And the confrontation is, my parents want me to go to church. I don't want to go to church. How do I talk to them about that? There are several types of conversations. We have text conversations.
Sure.
Now, this is not a text conversation in my mind.
Yeah.
Texting to me is the exchange of immediate helpful information, like what time do you want to meet?
Sure.
Or where are we going to meet? Or are you going to a certain restaurant? Or anything that has to do with life significance is not for texting in my mind.
Yeah.
You don't ask for a divorce
Sure.
when you're texting. You don't.
I feel called out in a sense. When I was in college, I once broke up with a girl over text. Not my brightest moment. Is that
to avoid the face-to-face?
It was not.
Yeah.
It wasn't good. It's not recommended, folks. Let's get back to the question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think another type of conversation that we have daily, I guess, is just casual conversations. They can happen in hallways.
Sure.
They can happen when you see somebody in a parking lot, somebody you know. Preferably. those don't require appointments. They don't require setting up a time to meet and have a conversation about something. They're just casual conversation, maybe with a teammate.
Sure.
Okay. The potentially confrontational conversations with a person who is of a different, and I don't know what the next word should be, of a different rank.
There's power dynamics at play here.
A boss and an
Sure.
employee, and I'm the employee, and
Yeah.
I need to talk to the boss, and it may be confrontational. Or a student with a teacher.
Yep.
This is not casual, and how are you?
Yeah.
This is, we have a problem here. A child with a parent. The parent has more authority over the child. And what my suggestion is that you set up a time and a place to discuss that. And the phrasing is, let's say there's a child. The questioner is probably a minor.
Sure.
And I would suggest that he goes to his parents, he, she, I don't know what it is, and goes to his parents and say, Mom and Dad, there something that I really need your advice about. Now, that's key.
Yeah.
Ask for advice, even if it's confrontational, even if you don't want it.
That's really wise.
I have to talk to my boss. I need your advice about something.
Yeah.
Parents, I need your advice, and I'd like to have a time where we could sit down and I could listen to you.
Yeah.
And we could talk about what's on my mind. I think a parent would jump on that immediately.
Yep.
And set the time, set the place, no distractions, no phones.
Yeah.
So if the phone rings, it isn't, oh, I have to take this one. Put the phone away.
Yeah.
And set up that time and a place. And then use soft language. Use soft language when you're asking for the time. I need your advice. I need your advice. I keep saying it and saying it. Try that. And it has always been successful for me because
that.
the other person then, I'm not defending myself here. He's asking for something from me, and I can give it as I choose to give it.
Yeah.
That creates an environment that is a place where the confrontation can take place, but it's not confrontational, if that's permitted to say it that way.
Yeah.
Don't ask questions that begin with why. Why were you late? Always avoid why, because why elicits a defensive response. Instead, what made you late? And now the what made me late is outside of me.
You have the opportunity to offload it.
Yes, it's outside of me. The traffic made me late.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm talking to a student, then I may say, what made you late? It was the traffic. And in my head, I'm thinking, get up earlier. I wasn't late. I got up earlier than you did. But that's not the kind of confrontation that I want to have with them. Argue with your parents. That's fine. But don't quarrel with them. To argue means to present information, opinions, in order to persuade the other person to agree with you. If voice volume is raised, if some sort of attack is raised ad hominem, arguments against the person, that's not going to be effective, because when the other person is on guard, they are going to want to hold on to control, and they will make a decision that may not be mutually agreeable. The attorneys will argue before the Supreme Court, but they don't quarrel with the justices. That's an important distinction.
Gotta get messy.
And be respectful.
Yes.
Listen.
Yep.
Don't scoff. Don't look away. Don't roll your eyes when the other person is, when your parents are talking. Don't show disgust. Be grown up.
Yeah.
Just for the period of time that you're talking to your parents.
Yeah.
Okay. At the end of this, if I have to talk to my boss, there's going to be a decision made, and I may not agree with his decision, but I have to live with it. Just accept it. Buck up. Man up. You tried, and it wasn't accepted the way you presented the argument, and so you lose. But you lose in the sense that you have at least presented a respectful, substantive, cordial
Yeah.
presentation to the boss. If it's your parents, they have authority over you. And we are to do what they say,
Sure.
as long as what they tell us to do is not anti-biblical.
Sure.
There are some parents
Yeah.
that probably are just not good at giving good advice. But that's what I would say.
Yeah.
I would say tell them why you don't want to go to church. And then at the end of that conversation, regardless of the outcome, thank you for listening to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
That's got to be appreciated. Now, as you go into this conversation, you might want to be prepared to explain why you don't want to go to church.
That's what I was gonna say. Is
I beat you to it.
There's a reason why this question's getting asked. There's a reason why this particular person does not want to go to church, and I'm just real curious what that reason is, and that has a big bearing on how the rest of this conversation will go for you.
It's boring. I don't want to dress up. We used to have to dress up to go to church.
Sure.
It probably still happens in some parts of the country, but we don't dress up to go to church.
Right.
And I don't get anything out of it.
Yeah.
Or
I want to sleep.
I want
yeah.
Exactly. I want to sleep. I want to be with my friends. Well, what about the youth group? Can't you go to the youth group and what's that like? I think you need to be prepared with some reasons why you don't want to go, because a parent who is avid about listening and getting advice, I would ask, why is it you don't want to go? Or I wouldn't phrase it that way. I would say, what makes you not want to go?
That's right. We don't start with why.
Don't start why. Avoid why.
Yeah.
What makes it the way it is that you don't want to go?
Yeah.
And then maybe have a friend and have that little mock conversation with them beforehand. You might listen to your own reasons and see, oh, those are weak. Those are feeble. Those aren't good reasons.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The things I was going to say, number one, we just mentioned this, but the having a reason and being able to articulate what that reason is. I don't think you can just launch into that conversation with your parents saying, so I don't want to go to church anymore.
And so I'm not.
And just pretending that that's going to suddenly, they're going to be like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so having a reason, I think, is paramount. You mentioned this yourself. What I was going to emphasize was that, you're going to have to really be careful in entering the conversation with, I think you used the word respect. I would.
It's not a word I like a lot, by the way.
No, It feels kind of gross to demand that or say that. But what I mean.
Well, casual regard. For the other person.
Yeah. I think there's a respect, and I think that it would benefit this question asker to enter the conversation with humility.
Yes.
And not an assumption that their way has to go, right? Or not an assumption that they have to win or so forth. You have to approach this conversation as here should be the goal of the conversation. The goal of your conversation with your parents should not be to get out of going to church on Sunday. The goal of this conversation should be to give your parents a better understanding of where your brain is about church.
Yes, exactly. And at the same time, assume that the parents in this situation, whatever it is, love you.
Yes.
And they want the best for you.
Yeah.
Find out why it is they want you to go to church.
Yes.
Why? What are the benefits?
Yes.
What are the benefits? What are you trying to do here?
Yeah.
Are you trying to get me saved? Are you trying to get me
moralized?
Are you trying to get me
to
be a church, to be a prayer? What is the deal?
Right.
And then actually listen.
Right.
Maybe they will convince the child.
Yeah. Because there's a universe where this conversation goes really ugly because
Yes.
the child says, I don't want to go to church because it's boring, and the parents are saying, but you gotta go to church because it's just what we do.
Right.
And neither of those arguments are good.
They're both weak.
They're both very weak arguments, and they're both just tussling
Yes.
over nothing of substance.
Right.
If the child can articulate and I say child almost like
Probably
in a
an
dismissive,
adolescent.
but probably an adolescent. Like, let's say the average student that you have or that would have asked this question, probably dartboard, 16 years old, right? The average 16-year-old should not enter this conversation just saying, well, I don't want to.
Right.
Because that's nothing.
But they haven't articulated in their own minds why
Right.
they don't want to
Yeah.
go.
They need to evaluate why that is.
Yes.
And the best case scenario for this question, like, let's give the question asker a benefit of the doubt. Maybe their reasoning, this is probably not the case just statistically, but maybe the reasoning is, I'm not connecting with Jesus at this church. I'm not getting much out of this church. Can we go somewhere else? Can I try my friend's church that I've heard about?
Can I go to church with my friend?
Exactly.
I agree. That's
Right.
brilliant. Absolutely.
That would be a wonderful out, I think, of maybe finding success in this conversation.
Yes.
Of course, it requires another destination. But
well,
maybe
it does, but that's a logistic.
that's great. Maybe your parents are willing to try it with you. Maybe your parents are, all right, this Sunday, let's go there and see how it is.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be amazing, right? That'd be a wonderful outcome
would be
of this.
a solution to the issue.
Yeah.
But I would say to the adolescent, go into the conversation. You're asking for advice. Actually ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way I feel
Yeah.
when I go. This is the reason I don't really want to go back. This has been
Yeah.
happening. What's your advice to me, Dad? What's your advice to me,
That's
Mom?
really good.
Tell me how I
Yeah.
should handle this issue.
Don't jump in. Don't. How about this? Is a way of wording that, like, don't propose a solution per se. Like, we have this term in, I don't know what the category would be. Leadership, business, systems thinking. There's this term called solutionitis, which is this idea of people that are either in their jobs, in their family, whatever, that they just jump to conclusions
Okay.
without, like, better defining the problem.
Right.
So if we define the problem really well, we open ourselves up to develop much more creative solutions. Whereas oftentimes we say, oh, there's a problem, there's a solution. And we just kind of jump to that. Like, this kid's solution might be, I have to stop going to, like, it's boring, I have to stop going to church.
Right.
Whereas what you're suggesting, which I think is brilliant, is if you don't approach your parents with the solution, approach your parents with the problem, saying,
Exactly.
this is hard for me, this isn't working for me, I don't get it, what are we doing?
Exactly. Well, the parents have the authority.
That's
And
just,
the parents
that's just necessity.
therefore have the control.
Yes.
Acknowledge, if you're the adolescent, acknowledge that control.
Yeah.
I want to do what you think is best for me.
Yeah.
But I need your advice.
And I trust you.
I trust
that
you.
you have my best intentions at
Oh,
heart.
man.
Like,
what parent wouldn't melt under that kind of a conversation?
Right?
Yes. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And then I think there would be more substantive, we've used that word 2 or 3 times, but there would be
But it's fair.
an exchange of more important information so that both could realize, there is an issue here. Let's see what we can do to work it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think when I started talking about, like, respect and humility, that is the manifestation of it. It's not from this gross, oppressive, like, respect your elders with a hammer and fist. You know, like, that. It's not. It doesn't have to be like that. Rather, the respect is simply an acknowledgement of reality. Like, your parents are your parents.
That's right.
Like, they have authority.
Well, respect, I don't know if we get into this, but respect to me is not a concept that I enjoy.
Sure.
It comes from means again, and spect is from spectare in Latin, which means to look. Respect
Like
means to
spectacle,
look
yeah.
again. Look again.
Look
for
again.
what reason? Well, because I'm looking up to you. I want to see who you are again.
Yeah.
I want to give you the acknowledgement that I know your position, and I know your position in my life.
Yeah.
We here at the school, it is the protocol of the school that the teachers be addressed by their last name.
Yeah.
And so it's Mr. This, Mrs. This, Miss This, and so forth. I have never really liked that. I would prefer to be called Jim.
Sure.
At the school. And I've talked to principals in 2 schools about that. And the answer at the other school was yes, but there needs to be a title in front of it. So, well, I don't want Pastor Jim.
You Mr. Jim?
Mr. Jim, Mr., but the reason that we're given is because that shows respect. That doesn't
Right.
show respect. You can disrespect somebody and call them by their last name.
Sure.
I would rather have the actual regard from
Yeah.
the students. And if you don't respect me, at least respect the position I hold at the school.
Yes.
And you might not like the President of the United States, but when you address him, he's Mr. President.
Sure.
Because of the position
Yeah.
that he holds. That's true
That's good.
with us, too. Take into consideration all these things we've said about how to talk to your parents.
Yeah.
And give them an acknowledgement that they love you and you want the best, and ask for advice, because that puts you in a subservient position. You're actually controlling them by doing it. It's a manipulative position. But let it not be that. Let it be, I really care what you have to say and how can I fix this problem.
Yeah. That's a wonderful place, I think, to end and wrap up. And
I agree.
I want to just say to this question asker, thank you, first of all, for submitting this just on a base level. But thank you for, I think, the vulnerability of a question that probably a lot of people your age are thinking to some extent. Maybe, certainly not all of it, but this is I feel like this is some element of a dynamic in a lot of families that I know.
And it isn't always, I don't want to go to church. It could be, why can't I be with my friends?
Sure.
Or why do I have to study now? Or why are we doing this? And we always go to grandparents' house every single week. So
it's applicable in many more
these
conversations as well.
Apply in any kind of relationship and conversation.
Absolutely. So again, thank you for that question. If you don't mind outing your name, email us. Tell us how it went. brewingwithjim@gmail.com.
That would be good. Outing.
Yeah. Let's go to the second segment, which is the Blindside Jim segment. This is the part of the show where we ask Jim a question that he has no idea what's coming. Yeah. It is a question that's always meant to just be fun and evoke a good conversation or something like that. Jim, our question for you this morning: what is a cherished or formative childhood memory or experience that you still think about all the time?
Oh, wow. Cherished. We went on vacation in a car.
Yeah.
And I don't know that cherished. My brother and I would sit in the back. But those are vivid memories of where we would go and how we would get there and what we would do, and the reprimands we got because we were at the Grand Canyon and we wanted to finish the comic book and didn't even get out when we were there.
Well, did you approach the conversation with your parents with respect and humility?
No. I mean, what do you mean? Why do I have to get out?
Yeah, exactly.
I got to finish this comic book.
What an applicable.
Those were some moments. I remember I had a wagon that my parents gave me that was the biggest wagon I have ever seen, even since. It was a red wagon, but it was it was probably 5-6 feet long, and it was wide, and it had the handle in the front with the pole that went down. You could sort of steer with it. Okay. I was the envy of every kid in the neighborhood, and I enjoyed. Well, we lived on a street that was relatively flat until you got about 2 houses away, and then there was a steep hill that went down, and I would get in that wagon and race down there. It was dangerous.
Sure.
It was risky. It was childish, but I was a child.
Sure.
And those, for some reason that I cannot explain, those are fun memories to me. Having fun with that wagon. And,
yes.
Okay, that's there's that.
Love it.
There was another memory that is not to be cherished, but taught me something. In the same street, down where the hill started, on the left side, was a friend, and he was, I think I was 6 or 7 years old. He was 10. Oh my gosh, a 10-year-old. He was so grown up.
He was so cool.
His father owned a candy store.
Jackpot.
Oh my goodness. I didn't care about friendship with this guy. I cared about being nice to this guy so I could get candy.
There you go.
And he came out one day and he said, "Do you come down here just for the candy?" Well, yeah. I had no social maturity. I didn't want any. I still don't have that much. And I learned from that you don't have a friendship with somebody just for what you can get out of it.
Right.
I think everybody who has a friendship with anybody, there is some benefit from it.
Yeah.
There's the enjoyment of it. There's the interaction. There's all sorts of benefits, I guess, or at least some. But that's a childhood memory.
Yeah.
I can remember my grandfather was a railroadman, and he was a brakeman on the M and St. L, the Minneapolis and St. Louis Railroad. He took me for a ride in a steam engine one time on the railroad, and it was a real steam engine, and the train was behind us. And
that's amazing.
That's always been in there. What a cherished memory that was.
It's beautiful.
There are childhood memories like that. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah. My brain jumps to road trips as well. That, like, genuinely, that was my first thought before you even said it. And we talked about this on a previous episode. Remember, we talked about like vacation destinations or something, and we both mentioned road trips. Yeah, I mentioned back then too, but we went on summer road trips when I was a kid. My parents had an RV, and we would go kind of all over the western United States for the most part.
Gosh.
We'd be gone for 3 weeks at a time.
Did you sleep in the RV?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You can sleep while it's driving too. It's great. You can just walk around and go to the bed and and just crash. It was the best. There's bathroom on board, there's kitchen on board. We would just stop for gas usually, or to switch out drivers. It was awesome. Those were the days.
What fun.
For me also, just other formative stuff. I think of playing Little League for a couple years. I think of playing video games with my friends growing up. I remember like the days of going to, we can just play games online these days. But back in the early 2000s, you would pack up you'd have to unplug your game console from the TV, put it in a box or a backpack, and then take it to your friend's house and then plug it in. And hopefully they had extra controllers and this and that. And but there are so many good memories of being at a friend's house playing, 2-player, 3-player, 4-player video games together. And those were unique experiences.
You were talking about the electronics that we didn't have.
Sure.
And that made me think of another memory that is still vivid, and I think I was 4. That's going back a few years.
They had electronics?
I knew it was coming. I knew that you were going to say something.
You set me up for it.
I guess I did. We didn't have a television. No one did.
Sure.
That was just not. We had radios. We had console radios that we would sit around and listen to. And then my dad and mom came home one day, and they said, the neighbors down the street got a television set. set.
Wow.
It was a set.
A set,
You know,
yeah.
yeah. And we're going to go down and watch a television show. And I said, okay. We had my brother and I don't know my brother, he was too little, but I had to take a bath. I had to get dressed. I had to be told how to behave when we
Wow.
go down there. And we're going to sit. And I wasn't even quite sure what a television was.
Sure.
We went down and we were welcomed into, and there was this box and the screen on it, although I'm sure I didn't know the word screen.
Sure.
And they turned it on and we watched the Jerry Lewis show. And Jerry Lewis was on there, and I don't remember the show. I remember walking home, because it was neighbors we walked. I remember walking home with my dad next to me, and I said, how did those people get in there?
Yeah.
And he said, they're not in there. I said, well, where are they?
Yeah.
And he said, they're in a place where they have a camera, and it comes through the air. And none of that was understandable to me.
Right.
And to be straightforward with you, I still don't understand how all this comes through the air.
Yes.
But and then I walked home and I was fascinated, and
Yep.
I wanted to know if we could go back sometime. And he said, we'll have to wait to be invited.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a memory.
I love that so much. That's such a sweet. Oh man, that like the analog to that for me is the first time my grandmother, when I was a child, got like an HD TV, and that was the first HD TV that we had seen in our lives, and that was just a spectacle. I remember watching some like old football game or something on it. But anyway,
Well, everything
Yeah.
was black and white.
right? Oh
And
yeah,
there was no color. And then my uncle said that he has color on his television. And we went to my uncle's house. This was in Oklahoma City, and irrelevant. But we watched the TV. He had a piece of plastic that he taped over the screen, and the top of the plastic was blue.
Yeah.
And there were sort of Caucasian flesh tones in the center, and then there
Oh, my
was
goodness.
green on the bottom. It was like a kindergarten drawing, and we watched the color on this.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It was horrible. But
Oh, that's so fun.
okay,
All right.
enough memories.
Let's wrap this up.
Let's
Thank
do.
you again for another episode, Jim.
It was fun. Thank you too, Joseph.
Thank you to the audience for submitting our questions that we answer every week. We hope that you continue to submit more, or
Please
that you
do.
just reach out to us in general. If you have a question, if you have a comment, any other kind of just thing where you just want to reach out, introduce yourself, say thank you for the show, whatever. The way to do that is to email us at brewingwithjim@gmail.com.
Right.
We check that account all the time, and we will respond to you. We'll reach out back, and just thank you for listening again. So I guess with that, that's
For
another
me too.
episode.
Yeah. Take care,
Wonderful.
everybody.
Bye-bye. The topics that are covered and the answers that are offered during episodes of Brewing with Jim are designed to mine the wisdom attained from a life of pastoral ministry and care. They do not constitute professional or clinical training or expertise in the areas of counseling or mental health. CVCS and its podcast network want to provide a platform for the discipleship of our community. Brewing with Jim is our attempt to foster that environment in a format that is accessible for everyone to participate in. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during the show are the speaker's own, and they may or may not represent the views, thoughts, or opinions of Capistrano Valley Christian Schools or its faculty. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. This episode has been a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools Podcast Network. Capistrano Valley Christian Schools is a Christian JK through 12 school in San Juan Capistrano, California. Be sure to check out, subscribe to, and leave a review of this show and the other shows on our network on your podcast player of choice. Doing so supports the school community in a multitude of ways. For more information about the CVCS Podcast Network or any of our other shows, check out cvcs.org or email podcasts@cvcs.org. On behalf of the whole network, this is Mr. Jasper saying thank you again for listening and stay tuned for more.